Hi, this is János, it is Real World Audio, and it's time now to share a little report what a good power cable does in your system. And now this is a direct experience. A short while ago there was a power outage, and then when I next day turned the system back, the DAC would not turn on. So I did a little hunting and basically unplugged it and blah blah blah. And short and tall, anyway, I ended up just plugging it into a different outlet through an extension cord and a regular, that molded black power cord that you get with any appliance. And from that outlet I was getting power. So anyway, and later on I have not changed it back yet to the silver power cord because I have to crawl under blah blah blah, and when I realized that it's still the junk power cord running the system, it's already on, and then I'm not turning it off. Let's just listen to it. But listening to it, it just like brought me this idea that now I can share with you a very recent experience of what a quality power cord makes in a system. And talking about systems, when you have different systems, it makes different impact. Sometimes putting in a better power cord even can make your system sound worse, because it will allow the system to show more of its true colors, and if those true colors are rubbish, then when you let them shine through, it's not shining through, but it's just showing its teeth and claws. And so that's why there's no black and white solution. You have to always gauge based on your what you have. And now I'm going to share what I have, which I would consider as like a high level system, and people have different ideas of high levels. This is mine after being an audiophile for 30 years and hearing basically thousands of systems which are like really high-end systems, from level 5 audio node through everything. And what I have now, I consider it that basically the best system I can have, provided the options I have around. And when in this scenario I change the power cord in the DAC, then this is what I experience. So basically the number one experience that was a really big shift, really big change compared to the silver cable, is that the imaging collapses. And I started noticing that from my voice of Lancelot speakers, when the dialogue, so when I'm watching a movie, there you have a little lower grade coding, especially like this MP3 level coding that you get from Netflix and stream movies. There it's really obvious that now when a character is talking from the far left or far right, then I hear them talking, the sound coming from the compression driver. I can point at the compression driver, oh, the sound is coming from there. And I was really astonished about that, because these voice of Lancelot speakers, they just absolutely disappear, and you have no clue where the sound is generated, because it's in your room, and there's no. It sounds like when you have an instrument or person, someone talking, they have their own dedicated space where the sound is coming from, and there's no artifacts coming from the drivers. But now it was like, oh, I'm hearing them like coming from the driver. What's going on? That was number one thing that I noticed. The number two thing is that the image started to collapse to the two sides. So instead of having a nice theater basically in my room, the thing started to just pile together to left side and right side, and the center was starting to just thin out, kind of like the action is disappearing from all around you, and three main areas started to appear: the left side, right side, and the very center. So when something was really focused coming from the center, so left and right giving equal sound pressure level, that's when you hear it as if the sound was coming from the center. So when that was the case, there was like a center there, or a center image, and left and right, but in between these two, so these areas thinned out a lot. And when you are in your audio journey and you are building your audio system, then the difference between having a wonderful image and having this thinned out image that's basically left, right, and just dead center, that's the difference between the most entry level audio system and the highest level. So basically, just by changing the power chord to that black power chord and the single power chord in the deck, you can transform a system that has the highest level imaging to the beginner audio system. So that's how much a cable can affect your system on the imaging side. But now, the imaging wasn't the only thing that I noticed that there's a difference. The naturalness was completely gone from the sound, and I am using the Ampex tube amplifiers, but they now sound like a solid state amplifier. So I definitively had the impression that I have the Conrad Johnson in the system. The bass got transformed totally like the bass that the CJ 350SA presents it, and usually the high-end solid-state gear present it that way, that you feel the presence of bass. And it's not like you have music instrument, everything like happening separately, but they meld together happily into an amalgam of bass, which is a directionless, boundaryless, just like something present in your room. Like when someone, like most people who want a good stereo, I want bass, you know, and that's what you get. And even when you have like a higher level solid state amplifier, of course it's doing this thing much more articulated manner and much more cultured manner than an entry-level solid state, but to my hearing, compared to a good tube amplifier, really good tube amplifier, it's still just like an amalgam of bass, and it's not, there's no texture in it, very little directionality, and it's like chewed together. And of course, it also depends on the music that you listen to. There are some music where it's not that obvious, and other music it's really obvious. And even I was just now listening to these three albums, and when I listened to Jamiroquai, this is Jamiroquai, a funk odyssey from the 90s. And for those of you who don't know my channel really, this is not a burnt CD, these are the originals, but I ditched the hard plastic cover and I put the, you know, their inside and the little notebook you have, and the CD with a plastic case. So now I have all my CD collection in a bin under my sofa, under my chair here. I'm sitting on my CD collection, literally, at least half of it. And so that it takes up like so much less space and weight, like a third of the weight compared to that. So basically, coming back to Jamiroquai, usually in the recorded music in the 90s, I think it was not done really quite as well as in the 80s in the area of content, of musical content in the pop culture. Like the 80s music was just phenomenal. Compared to that, the 90s, I think there was a kind of a an obsession with bass and just primitive beats and lack of complexity and just loud music in general. But Jamiroquai is a really refreshing break from that tendency, and yes, it really rocks. If you want to party, you can put it on. And this is one of those albums that is not just a single song. So there's one song on it, what is that, 2001, track number 9, which I think if you were living in the 90s as a more or less adult-ish, then you know this track. It was in one of the Godzilla movies, it was part of the soundtrack of that, and that was really popular. But it's not just that single song, which at that time was special, because it had a lot of deep bass, like a lot of, I think about 30 hertz. It has a lot of 30 hertz material. And at that time, people started experimenting with a lot of deep bass at that frequency. That was one of the first things. But the whole album is really, really awesome. So you can put on the CD and listen to the whole album, and it's a fantastic experience. And that's what I just did. And also listen to 2 more albums. So I'm using that Onkyo CD changer, and I just loaded all of these albums into it and hit play, and it played one after the other. Then of course I went to Björk. This is Björk's first album, and as you know, like I listen to this a lot. And if you listen to Jürgen's channel, I Am Mad, or in the German version, the I Am Mad, like I am together mad. This is also one of his favorite CDs to play. And if you like pop music and just, you know, just rock out, these are really, really awesome. Björk is more of a cerebral. It gets you more into a yeah, but Jamiroquai, it's more like partying, active partying. Björk is more like a one-person partying. And then Kate Bush, and for Kate Bush, the amazing thing, what I really noticed, what that power chord made the difference, is not just the sound sounding like coming from a transistorized amplifier, which is kind of like the bass just taking over the show, and just the mid-range and the highs are getting kind of pushed in the back. But I also noticed that the speech intelligibility just dropped tremendously. So when I switched from the analog output of the CD player, then I had no problem listening to the vocals. And when I switched over to the DAC with this junk power chord, it's like, what, I can barely, I had to concentrate on the lyrics to understand, to make out the words she's saying. Like, what's happening? That's just so wrong. So I think that's it. That's just a little experience sharing, that yes, power chords make a tremendous difference. And it depends a lot what kind of equipment you are you are hearing. If it's like a really low level equipment, then when you are changing power chords, the impact is not as big, because when the limiting factor is your equipment, then changing the power chords doesn't make that much of a difference, because you cannot hear the change. If your equipment is really fine-tuned, it allows a wide range of expression, then different power chords will voice that expression in a very different manner. But when the expression range, I could say the dynamic range of expressibility, of what kind of textures, tonalities, dynamic shading, details your equipment can express. If that range is really narrow, then changing the power chord does not do much to it. And and if you have like a really junk stuff, you still hear that it's kind of junk. The whole thing is not expressing much. You put in a good, decent power chord, you can see a tiny bit of improvement. And then you put in an excellent power chord, you will hear a dive, like it's getting worse, because now you are hearing some of the nasties that the thing is producing. But when you have a really high level system, then the power chord will make a night and day difference. And for those of you who know, I have the DAC in my system is a heavily modded PS Audio DL3 DAC, and that is not regarded as the last word by anyone if you look at that. But when you look at it, even Paul McGowan of PS Audio says that this DAC is critically sensitive to power chords. And most people who own this DAC never ever tried it with a really high level power chord, for the simple reason that such a power chord costs maybe like 10 times what the DAC costs. And when people buy that kind of power cable, they say, okay, I will buy a DAC that also costs like $5,000-$10,000, and then I can justify using it with a power chord like that. But if you just keep that DAC and you use a really high level power chord, you can DIY it and then it will cost you a fraction of the price. But then it can get you a level of experience that just goes far, far beyond what you know that DL3 is capable of with that level of power chords that you match to it based on its price range. And this is true for the entirety of audio. There are gems scattered all over the place, like speakers, amplifiers, whatnot, that when you put them into a much higher level system, they can keep up. They really show their true colors, that they are much, much better than what you would think based on the price category and based on the general way how people use it who can afford that kind of equipment. And so that's it, basically. Please share your experiences that you had with power cable, both good and bad, and I think that's why my channel can be of use to you, that it can also act not as a repository for me sharing stuff, but when you look at the comments, you also see what others have experienced. And so far, when new people find my channel, they are always amazed, like how good the comment section is and how it's really worth to read the comments. There's really a lot of fantastic sharing going on, and I'm really guilty now in the past couple of weeks that I could share very little in the comments because my life has been super duper busy, and also it will be quite busy in the next couple of months, so very little time for me to spend on the computer that is not work. And so that's why I try to put most of my efforts when I have time to spare to make videos and answer questions and comments in the videos if as possible, so that you can benefit the most out of it. And thank you for being here, tuning in for my little channel. Have a wonderful day, wonderful weekend or weekday if you are watching it later. Please like, subscribe, and if you want to get me a cup of coffee or tea through Buy Me a Coffee, that is just plain fantastic. Bye bye.